Hello everyone, and welcome to the Commexis Cast Daily. Today we're talking about YouTube adding Wikipedia articles to some conspiracy videos, whether Wikipedia likes it or not, and eMarketer's report on A/B testing not producing statistically significant results. Hello everyone, I'm Matthew McGrorty, the videographer and podcaster here at Commexis, and today I'm joined by the lead strategist at Commexis, Phillip Brooks.
Good morning.
So our first story, YouTube adding Wikipedia articles to conspiracy videos. So obviously this comes in response to a lot of controversial videos coming up in their trending, top #1 videos trending section on the site, which is algorithmically chosen by YouTube itself. And some critics also say that they are designed to push viewers to extremes and extreme opinions, et cetera, et cetera. So you might remember last month as well that some videos of the survivors of the Parkland shooting were also being called crisis actors. Well, a video of that appeared at the #1 trending, and ever since then there's been a lot of pressure on YouTube to sort of figure out what they're going to be doing with these conspiracy videos. Susan Wojciki, the YouTube CEO, spoke Tuesday evening at a panel at South by Southwest Interactive Festival in Austin and showed some examples of these information cues, which you will be seeing now. So the feature is going to be launching in the coming months, and basically, from what I've seen of the pictures, we'll be adding small Wikipedia descriptions underneath. It looks like the title of the YouTube video. So the examples that were given were, this conspiracy of the faked moon landing, and it will have a Wikipedia article focusing on that. So before we get too much more into it, what do you think of this, Phillip, before I start dishing my hot take?
I mean, obviously, the credulousness of the general public is always frightening to me, I guess, because the fact that these things gain any traction at all is always so alarming. But I think they have to take some steps to it to kind of curb it. I don't know what the answer is, other short of editorial control. To me, I would just slap a big label that says satire on all of the ones that I think are crazy like that. But I think looking to find a trustworthy source that can verify that these are not as they claim would be ideal. However, the most that I find when dealing with people that believe these kinds of things is they don't believe any credible sources. They only believe their own sources. So I don't know how much help that's going to be. But if you're somebody who's in the middle that's capable of being swayed by this, I think you're pretty much beyond help at that point if you're going to be somebody that's that easy to sway with something that's that utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, what bothers me a lot about it, and I think you touched on a couple of great points there, is that not that Wikipedia isn't necessarily a trustworthy source, because some people would argue. I think Wikipedia probably doesn't get as much credit as it deserves. I think it's relatively accurate, and there were a couple tweets from the executive director of Wikimedia, so the people who own or run Wikipedia, and she also said that you're supposed to, in this tweet thread, you're supposed to look at Wikipedia with a critical eye. Most of it is going to be accurate or relatively accurate, but there's always going to be small things that could be changed or corrected. Wikipedia, for reference, was not in talks with YouTube to have this added. YouTube just decided that them, along with a couple other sources, were going to be used for this project. But my main issue with it is, adding a Wikipedia source, as you mentioned, probably isn't going to sway anybody. So if the problem is conspiracy videos, and we look at what Facebook did with this might be the fake news identifier or something like that, or even Facebook using Wikipedia potentially in the past as sources of, hey, you can read a description of what this organization is from Wikipedia. We kind of know that this doesn't work as well as they expect it to, hopefully.
It's kind of already baked into the fact that it's called a conspiracy in the first place, because these people who believe that there's a conspiracy are not going to be capable of differentiating, well, this is part of the main conspiracy. They're just going to go ahead and apply that brush to everything that would be considered, well, Wikipedia is part, they're in on it. They're in on it. They're all in on it. So to be honest, I don't know how helpful this will be. But I mean, if you're in the middle, I can't imagine what 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 kind of person's in the middle that would be swayed by this, but
I don't know.
If that is the case, that there's somebody that wasn't already down this path that suddenly saw this and was like, oh wow, yeah, there's crisis actors. I weep for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the solution isn't putting Wikipedia articles to give people more information, though that is certainly helpful to some extent. I think the issue is if you don't like these conspiracy videos and YouTube is finding them to be a problem in that sense, that they should just get rid of them or something like that. I mean, there's also been other stories of conspiracy videos that have been able to pass through as more credible news sources because they feature clips from news, and YouTube's algorithm wasn't able to figure out that this actually wasn't a news clip, right? So I don't know. Some could argue editorial control is a little much, but at the end of the day, it's YouTube's platform, and if they're trying to find solution to these things that they deem as problems, I don't really think this is much.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. Really, it's they don't want to be known as controlling the editorial content, but in the end, this is just as damaging as any of the other stuff out there, like the Comet Pizza stuff, where an unhinged person may go out and act upon this clearly false information, and so they have at least some moral responsibility to make sure that what they're putting out there doesn't put the general public in danger.
Yeah. Well, YouTube CEO Susan Wojciki did not specify how many conspiracies were going to be on the initial list. Initially, they're going to be going after some of the more well-known ones, but they said that they're going to be hopefully expanding it over time to get some potentially controversial elements in the future and cover those. So for our second story for today, eMarketer came out with a report, most A/B tests do not produce statistically significant results. So about 2/3 of brand marketers, according to this report, use A/B testing to improve conversion rates, and that's from research by eConsultancy and Red Eye. And while A/B testing is common among publishers and marketers, most A/B tests fail to produce statistically significant results. According to a survey of 3,900 professionals worldwide by user testing, fewer than 20% of respondents reported that their A/B tests produced significantly results 80% of the time. But later in the same report, not to say that A/B tests are not useful because of this. John Donahue, the Chief Product Officer of programmatic platform Shinobi, told eMarketer that the benefits of A/B testing are undeniable. Developing any creative project, there are a lot of assumptions, and A/B testing allows you to remove those assumptions. And he mentioned later that A/B testing call to action features and ad headlines can save marketers 40% of their media budget on ad platforms like Facebook. So just generally speaking, what are we thinking about this?
Well, I think this is something where we have to look at the platforms specifically. I do a lot of email marketing here and on the behalf of a lot of our clients, and I think that statistically significant is a different number than significant results being produced from a conversion standpoint, because it depends on the size of your list to be able to say that you've actually produced a statistically significant number, to be able to look at the math and say, okay, well, this percentage went here, this percentage went here. If your mailing list is small enough, or it is less than 1,000, you could argue that the sample size is too small to actually get realistic numbers on that. So I think that as with everything, it needs to be viewed through a lens of credulousness and a grain of salt, and just understanding that the context of the data that you're looking at, and making sure that you understand that, especially in my case with an email list, you most likely have already a fairly targeted list right there. So pretty much what it is, that the reason you're targeting these people, and that should give you a little bit more of a statistically significant number, because you have a very, very drilled down target audience. If you're hitting a broad list like that, that's a good point to make. Don't put so much stock in the A/B testing. Unless you have overwhelming results in one way or the other, you're going to find that these, when you're hitting a blank slate, that some of these things are not going to really come back with. You may wind up with a 50-50. I get that a lot with, some of the more generalist lists that we hit. So, I think as with any of these data that we look at, it really comes down to context being applied to the numbers, and just understanding who your audience is and the way that you're reaching out to them to be able to understand if those if that conversion piece is a significant number.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you brought up a great point that just because A/B testing, when you have such a large audience, obviously it's going to be, the numbers are going to be potentially significantly less than you would find with a more concentrated audience. And I forget what I was reading, but it was a company talking about how they changed the wording of a call to action, and they got, I think it was like 10% more clicks or something like that. And their list was obviously small, so 10% is huge.
Right.
Yeah, but so obviously, things like that, A/B testing is going to help. Even if like 10%, is really big, 10% could be, depending on the size of your list, 3 people.
Right.
But 3 people could still be significant, relatively speaking.
I mean, if your cost per lead is extremely high, 3 people is a huge deal for you.
Absolutely.
And if you in the business, let's say for example, we have some attorneys that bring in cases that have significant amounts of money that can be one good case may very well pay for your entire marketing campaign for the year. So. Again, it's all relative. It needs to be viewed through a lens of context to be actually, before you make any judgment calls on the significance of your A/B testing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to today's episode of the Commexis Cast Daily. Check us out tomorrow for more of the latest trending news. Have a great day.